They went camping as a family of 6 and never came back. 5 years later, a hiker found their abandoned tent deep in the Oregon wilderness. What lay inside unraveled everything. The forest was quiet that morning, bathed in the soft gold of late August sun. The tall pines framed a wide clearing just off a remote gravel trail in Oregon's Cascade Mountains. In the middle of that clearing, a blue and white family-sized dome tent stood like a strange monument to a past no one remembered. The flaps were half-sipped, weather-worn, and brittle. One corner had collapsed, the stakes long since rusted out. But inside, everything was still there. Sleeping bags, rolled-up clothes, a plastic tub of untouched trail food, and a dusty family photo stuck inside a cracked lantern base. The photo showed a smiling couple with 4 kids, all beaming in front of what looked like the same tent. That was what hiker Mark Delaney stumbled upon 5 years after the Middleton family vanished without a trace. In August 1997, the Middletons were just another family, looking for a quiet escape. Paul and Marissa, high school sweethearts turned hard-working parents, had loaded up their minivan with their 4 kids: Chase, 12, Luke, 10, Bella, 8, and little Noah, who had just turned 5. It was a last-minute idea, a spontaneous camping trip to celebrate the end of summer.
Oh.
No reservations, no rigid plans, just a borrowed topographic map and a memory of Paul's childhood hikes near Mount Jefferson. They told neighbors they'd be back in 3 days. When they didn't return by the following Tuesday, no one panicked. People assumed they had decided to extend their trip. After all, it was the 90s. No cell phones, no social media, just handwritten notes on the fridge and a couple of disposable cameras in the glove box. But by Friday, concern turned into worry. Marissa's sister, Rachel, filed a missing persons report, and soon what had been a quiet summer break turned into statewide headlines. Helicopters combed the forests, dogs were brought in, rangers checked every logbook, every trail. Middletons had vanished completely, no vehicle, no gear, not even a gum wrapper left behind. It was as if the entire family had been erased. The only clue ever found was a single Sneakerlooks, size 3, with the name Middleton, written in faded Sharpie inside the tongue. It was found along a remote service road near the North Santiam River, miles from any marked trail. For years, that was a cold case, a heartbreaking mystery, the kind that left communities hollow and families broken. Till 2002, Mark Delaney was a retired fireman, widowed 2 years earlier. He'd taken to solo hiking as a way to cope with the quiet. That day, he wasn't looking for anything, just following a deer trail off the beaten path, hoping to snap photos of the morning fog rolling through the tree line. But what he found was a ghost story brought to life. The tent was half hidden, behind brambles in a stretch of forest that hadn't seen maintenance in years. Mark said the first thing he noticed was the silence, not the peaceful kind, but an eerie, breath-holding stillness that made him stop walking and listen. Then he saw it, the top of a faded blue tent peeking through the underbrush. At first he assumed it was abandoned by backpackers, but the moment he peeked inside, something didn't feel right. The sleeping bags were still laid out. Coloring book lay half-finished next to a box of crayons. A teddy bear with one eye was tucked into the corner of a child's pillow. The cooler was empty, but sealed, and stuck inside a cracked battery lantern. Wedged under the light casing was the photo. 6 faces smiling at the camera, Paul, Marissa, and the kids, sunburned, squinting, full of life. He called the sheriff's department the moment he had a signal. What followed was a flurry of headlines. Middleton family tent found after 5 years. No signs of life. For weeks, the story took over local news. The tent was collected as evidence. Photos circulated. Interviews aired. But again, the answers were elusive. There were no bodies, no blood, no obvious signs of struggle, no weather logs indicating a freak storm. Even the food, though expired, hadn't been torn into by animals. There were no scratch marks on the tent, no wildlife damage, and no signs of panic. It was as if the family had simply stood up in the middle of the day and walked away. But to Rachel McConnell, Marissa's sister, that made no sense. Rachel had helped raise the kids when Paul was working long shifts at the mill. She knew their routines, their fears. Bella never slept without her stuffed rabbit, which had been found zipped inside a pink sleeping bag. Noah couldn't fall asleep without his music box, but it was still in the tent, batteries long dead. Whatever happened? To them, she told reporters, it wasn't planned. They didn't walk away willingly, investigators agreed. Detective Alan Reeves, who had overseen the original search effort, was called out of retirement to consult. Now in his 60s, Reeves still carried the case like a wound he couldn't quite let heal. "We combed every mile of that wilderness," he told reporters. "That tent was not there in '97. I'd staked my badge on it, but there was no denying it now." GPS coordinates confirmed the site. Soil samples indicated disturbance too late. 1,997. Pine needles compacted under the tent's base matched that same season. So, if the tent had always been there, why hadn't anyone seen it? A ranger, off the record, put it plainly. Either it was moved, or we missed something we shouldn't have. Rachel, for her part, couldn't stop wondering about the cameras. Marissa always packed disposable ones for vacations, and Paul, being a proud dad, always took too many photos. There were at least 2 in the car, she told Reeves. Probably packed with their gear. But no cameras were found in the tent, no film, no vehicle, and most importantly, no trace of the family themselves. That's when the rumors began. Some locals spoke of the vanishing woods, a stretch of old-growth forest where compasses failed and strange sounds echoed through the trees. Others whispered about off-grid group survivalists who lived deep in the mountains, unseen and unbothered, and who didn't take kindly to outsiders. And then there were the darker theories, the ones that law enforcement never entertained publicly, but that everyone quietly feared, that someone had been out there with them, watching, waiting. 5 years is a long time. The forest reclaims what it wants. But in that clearing, untouched by fire or flood, that tent remained like a question mark, frayed, faded, and heavy with silence. No tracks, no trail markers, just a photo of a happy family and a story with a missing middle. Rachel visited the site a month after the discovery, accompanied by 2 deputies. She stood in the middle of the clearing for nearly an hour, saying nothing. When asked what she was thinking, she said softly, "It feels wrong, like they were never meant to be found." It was then that she noticed something odd. A footprint. Small, faint, near the back of the tent, where the collapsed stake had fallen a child's footprint. One that hadn't been there when the forensic team processed the site 2 weeks earlier. Rachel knelt beside it, brushing away the needles. She whispered her niece's name, Bella. But the forest gave no reply, only the wind threading through the branches above, like breath over bone. In that moment, the mystery deepened because someone or something had been there recently, watching. The footprint was too perfect to be old. The rain that had swept through the region just 4 days earlier should have wiped it away if it had been there all along. But it hadn't. The ground was still slightly damp where the needles had been. Disturbed, pressed into a soft depression near the tent's sagging back corner, a left foot. Child-sized, no shoe tread bare. Rachel crouched silently, her fingertips hovering just above the print. "This wasn't here before," she said. 2 Deputy Barnes, who stood behind her, scanning the perimeter. "I've seen every photo they took when they documented the scene. I went through them for hours." The deputy didn't speak right away. He looked out toward the tree line, where sunlit branches hung unnaturally still. "Then maybe someone's been back," he said. They returned to the station that afternoon with photos and soil samples. The print was cast in plaster, labeled, and logged. No one said it out loud, but every officer who saw it felt the same chill settle into their spine. 5 years gone, no sign of the family. Then suddenly, this a small footprint in soft earth. No others nearby, no animal tracks, no garbage, just one silent imprint. Detective Alan Reeves stared at the cast on the evidence table for a long time. "Whoever left this," he finally said, "either came alone or didn't leave." That week, the case was officially reopened. Maurice's dental records were pulled. Paul's employee files were scanned. The children's school photos, Bella in her favorite corduroy dress, Luke with his gap-toothed grin were printed again and circulated across the state. The story caught fire for a second time. Reporters flooded into town, many of them just old enough to remember the original headlines from their childhood. But as weeks passed, the interest faded again. No new evidence came, no new witnesses, just silence. Then came the hiker's journal. It was pure chance. A man named Dave Tompkins had been cleaning out his father's garage in Salem, Oregon, when he found a worn green notebook stuffed inside a weatherproof pouch. "My dad was an old-school backpacker," Dave explained. "Never liked cameras, but he wrote everything down." Inside, neatly dated entries detailed a solo trek in early September 1997, just a week after the Middletons vanished. The notes were practical. Trails taken, water sources found, wildlife spotted. Until one entry, scrawled in different handwriting with several words underlined, saw family in woods today, not campers. Dirty kids looked scared. Father had a large knife on belt. Watched me. Didn't speak. Backed away. Kept going. Something felt wrong. The handwriting matched Dave's dad's except for the shakiness. A ranger later pointed out that the trail noted in that entry passed less than a mile from where the tent would eventually be found. The original report was never filed. The elder Tompkins had passed away in 2005, and the notebook had sat unnoticed for nearly a decade. But now, with fresh eyes on the case, it sparked something deeper, because it wasn't the only sighting. Records from 1997 were scattered across counties, some still on paper, barely indexed. But an intern working with the Oregon State Police dug up an incident report from September 12, 1997. A woman named Alice Canungle, traveling with her husband near Detroit Lake, had reported seeing a group of kids walking barefoot along the road shoulder, led by a man with an old army backpack. She described them as quiet, withdrawn, like they were afraid to speak. That report had been dismissed. No sign of the group was found when troopers responded 3 hours later, but the timestamp put it just 2 days after the Tompkins journal entry, and it would have placed them walking away from the tent site, southbound. The dots weren't hard to connect. Someone had seen them more than once, and it looked more and more like the Middletons hadn't simply disappeared. They had been taken, but by whom? Rachel wasn't sleeping much. Nights felt too quiet, too long. She spent most evenings in her guest room, surrounded by old photo albums, cassette tapes, and report copies. On her whiteboard, she'd drawn a crude map connecting sightings, campgrounds, gas stations, anything within a 40-mile radius of the tent. One pin kept bothering her. Klamath Trail's gas stop, October 1997. The clerk. A man named Terry had written down a report about a woman with 3 kids who came in barefoot and nervous. He remembered her buying only bread and peanut butter. She looked like she'd been crying for hours. The children didn't speak. The report was vague. There was no surveillance footage, and nothing came of it. But now it felt important. Rachel and Detective Reeves drove out to the gas station, though most of the old town around it had dried up and disappeared. The building was boarded up, its sign half fallen. But Terry, now retired, lived nearby and agreed to meet. He opened the screen door before they even rang the bell.
Ow!
She had leaves in her hair, he said immediately. Reeves asked him to go slow, recall every detail. She came in with 3 kids. One of the boys had a scrape on his forehead. The girl, she was the one who looked at me right in the eyes like she wanted to say something. "Did she?" Rachel asked. Terry shook his head. "No, but I still remember the look, not just scared. Like she was trying to memorize my face, like she thought maybe I could help. Could she have been Bella?" Terry's eyes searched hers for a moment. "I think so. That's the girl in the photo, right? Brown hair, little freckle under her eye." Rachel nodded. "But here's the weird part," he added. "The man stayed outside watching from the car a beat-up pickup camper shell. I saw a shadow move inside the shell. Thought it might have been another person." "Could you describe?" "The man?" Reeves asked. Terry shrugged. Scruffy, early 40s maybe, looked angry, not drunk, just mean. He didn't take his eyes off them the whole time. "What color was the truck?" Reeves asked. "Red, faded red. Oregon plates, but Dirty couldn't read them. Rachel suddenly felt nauseous. He said 3 kids. There should have been 4. Terry nodded slowly.
That's right.
It was a boy, the girl, and a toddler. No sign of the older one. Reeves scribbled something in his notebook. Was a report ever filed? Yeah, but no one followed up, Terry said. Back then, people thought I was just seeing some lost hikers. I never forgot that girl's face, though. Rachel thanked him, but her voice cracked. If Bella had been trying to ask for help, why hadn't anyone saved them? That night, she pulled out the audio cassette Paul had recorded during their last family trip to the coast. It had been in a box for years, still labeled Seaside 1997. The sound was grainy, but familiar. Laughter, kids shouting, Marissa humming a lullaby. Halfway through the tape, Paul's voice cut in. Day 2, kids ate all the marshmallows. Luke found a snake and named it George. Bella wants to sleep in the tent alone tonight, we'll see. Rachel rewound the tape and played it again. That one moment, Paul's voice, calm and warm, felt like a window into the world before everything broke. But then something odd caught her ear. In the background, faint and nearly buried beneath static, was a voice-low male, not Paul. She turned the volume up. The words weren't clear, but the tone was harsh, angry. Keep them quiet. Rachel froze. The time stamp on the tape placed it on their second day, meaning someone else might have been at their site, someone who didn't belong. The cassette was sent to the state lab the following morning. Detective Reeves personally delivered it, accompanied by a copy of the Middleton family itinerary and a short transcript Rachel had typed out with trembling fingers, the time stamp. Paul's voice and the faint graveled whisper buried underneath. It'd keep them quiet. The analyst, a calm woman named Nina Wells, promised to isolate the background audio. Might take a day or 2, she said, but we'll get something out of it, assuming the tape hasn't degraded. Rachel nodded but couldn't shake the unease crawling up her spine. If that voice wasn't Paul's, then who had been with them? Meanwhile, back in town, the reopened investigation was starting to draw new attention not just from the press, but from locals who hadn't spoken up before. One such person was a former ranger named Bill Martin. Retired in 1998, Bill had been the trail supervisor for the Jefferson Corridor for nearly 30 years. A quiet man, he always carried a thermos of black coffee and a worn map book filled with hand-marked trails. He walked into the sheriff's office one afternoon, hat in hand. Never said anything because I didn't think it mattered, he told Reeves. But maybe it does now. He explained that in the fall of '97, about a month after the Middleton family went missing. He'd been clearing out debris along a side road near Red Lake when he'd come across something odd. An old camping stove, still warm. A cigarette butt, fresh ash. And something else, a half-eaten can of pork and beans, labeled torn off, nestled beside a child's plastic spoon. I remember thinking whoever left that didn't want to be found, he said. It was too neatly tucked in. Reeves sat up straighter. Why didn't you report it? Bill hesitated. Because I found it near an area the locals called Dead Man's Creek, not an official name, just a spot no one went. Old logging trail, overgrown, unlisted. Well, I got the feeling someone was watching me. Never felt that way in all my years on the job. Reeves asked him to mark it on a map. Bill drew a slow circle with his pen. Right here, just under this ridge. You won't see it from the main trail, but there's a hollow, there are steep walls. Quiet, too quiet. Later that evening, Reeves and Barnes hiked to the spot. Took 3 hours through uneven terrain and brittle brush. But when they reached the ridge, the air did feel different, heavier, quieter. The hollow opened below like a collapsed bowl. Trees curling inward as if bowing toward the center. Out. It was empty, no gear, no sign of life. But someone had been there. Barnes noticed the discoloration in the rocks first. Soot marks. Fire residue. And near one of the thicker trunks, a thin wire rusted and coiled around the base, as if once used to tie something or someone. Reeves didn't speak. He just knelt down and touched the earth. It crumbled softly under his fingers. The ashes weren't fresh, but not 5 years old either. At the state lab, the tape was cleaned, and run through 3 layers of noise reduction. Nina called them in the next morning. I was able to isolate the background, she said. The voice is definitely not Paul's. It's older, deeper, raspy, like a smoker. Listen closely. She pressed play. Paul's cheerful voice came first, talking about Luke and the snake. Then the sound of the wind, and beneath it, low and clipped. Keep them quiet. No lights. Rachel's heart lurched. Nina turned off the player. There's another word under that. I can't fully clean it, but I think it's a name starts with an R. Could be Rick. Ryan, Rob, but it's too garbled to confirm. Reeves rubbed his temple, and Paul didn't mention another person. No, Rachel whispered. He always narrated everything. If someone else had joined them, he'd have said something unless he didn't want to, unless he couldn't. The theory shifted again. This wasn't a random disappearance. This wasn't a family who got lost. Someone had been with them, possibly more than one. That afternoon, Rachel received a call that turned her blood cold. It was from a woman named Eddie Holloway, a social worker in Tammet County. She'd seen the news story, seen Bella's face. I don't know if this matters, Eddie began, but back in '98 I interviewed a girl, maybe 8 or 9, brought in by a logging crew who said they found her wandering near a fire access road. Wouldn't give her name, didn't talk. At all, terrified of adult men, refused to sleep unless a lamp was on. Rachel's hand clenched the phone. We put her in emergency foster care, Edie continued, but she ran away within the week, disappeared again. Back then, there wasn't much cooperation between counties, and we didn't have centralized digital records. Did she match Bella? Rachel asked. I can't say for sure, Edie admitted, but I remember her eyes big alert, always watching the door. They faxed the file. No fingerprints had ever been taken, no DNA, just a Polaroid, creased and yellowed, of a girl with unkempt brown hair and a scraped chin sitting stiffly on a cot. Her face was blurred by time, but something about the shape of her jaw, the tilt of her head, was Bella. Rachel stared at the photo for a long time, and then she noticed something in the bottom right corner. The girl was holding something in her hand, a music box, Noah's, the very one they hadn't found in the tent. Reeves brought in a profiler from the FBI, Special Agent Kara Denning, sharp-eyed and unsentimental. She looked through the case files, the photos, the transcripts. Whoever took them, she said, wanted control, not chaos. That tent was too tidy. The gear left behind was deliberate. And keeping some of the children alive for weeks, maybe longer, suggests psychological intent, not just violence. You're saying they were captive? Reeves asked. Yes, Denning replied. Likely moved from one place to another, isolated, rural. And the presence of a young girl matching Bella's description months later confirms at least some of them survived the first disappearance. Rachel's voice shook. But why leave her there? Why let her go? Denning's expression darkened. Sometimes captives get careless. Sometimes they lose interest. Or she escaped. They ran the girl's Polaroid through the FBI's facial age progression software. The system generated 3 images of what Bella might look like today, age 13. Posters were printed. And then, 4 days later, another call came in, this one from a thrift store employee in Prinville, on the edge of the forest zone. She'd seen the photo on TV and called to say she'd seen a girl just like that just a week ago, with a man. Not a father, she said, more like a handler. She didn't speak, the woman said, just looked right at me like she wanted me to say something, but I froze. Was there a name? Reeves asked. Yes, she replied slowly. The man called her Rose. Rachel's knees buckled. Bella's middle name had been Rose. The moment Rachel heard the name Rose, her legs gave out. She sat down right there on the floor of the sheriff's office, her back against the cold filing cabinet. Her hands trembled in her lap. No one knew. Bella's middle name. It hadn't been in any news report. It wasn't public record. The name had only appeared on her birth certificate, tucked away in a safe that had sat untouched in Rachel's hallway closet for nearly a decade. Reeves crouched beside her. We're going to find her, he said gently. Rachel didn't answer. Her heart was pounding too hard, her ears filled with a strange, Rushing silence rose. She hadn't heard that name in so long. Paul used to say it like a joke. My little Bella Rose, thorny on the outside, sweet in the center. It was something only family said. If this man was using that name, he'd known them intimately. The thrift store in Prinville was small, barely more than a wooden shack wedged between a post office and a bait shop. Inside, it smelled like dust, old coats, and warm plastic. The owner, a woman in her 60s, named Karen Miller, met them near the counter. "Oh, why?" "I tried to stall them, but they were only here a few minutes," she explained. The man, he was tall, lanky, maybe early 50s, hair going gray at the temples. He bought a used backpack and a long denim jacket, said they were going up into the Ochocos for a few days. She led Reeves and Agent Denning to the back wall, where a small black and white security camera hung above the register. "The footage is terrible," Karen warned. "It's an old VHS system, but I've still got the tape." The footage was grainy, flickering in and out, but there she was, a girl, maybe 12 or 13, standing near a coat rack, thin frame, long brown hair, arms crossed tight over her chest. Her eyes scanned the store slowly, alert. On the tape, the man entered the frame next, taller, in a camo jacket, his face mostly turned from the camera. He spoke to her, but never touched her. Still, it was clear he was in charge. Then, at minute 3, the girl glanced directly at the camera. It was only a second, but the look was unmistakable. Not fear, hope. "She saw it," Denning said softly. "She was looking for help." Reeves pressed pause. "Do we have anything else?" "A cent." "Plate?" Karen shook her head. No car visible. It must have parked around the corner. But a day later, FBI's forensic techs managed to pull a partial reflection from the coat rack's metal barra shape, then a flicker of a plate. Not a full number, but the last 3 letters for BW. It was enough. The Oregon Department of Motor Vehicles listed 5 vehicles in the last 6 years that ended in 4BW3 had been scrapped. One belonged to an elderly woman who died in 2002. The 5th was still active. A 1988 red Ford F-150 registered to a George T. Ellis, age 53. No current address on file. Reeves leaned over the DMV records. "Ellis, that name ring any bells?" Agent Denning tapped her pen against the table. "Could be real, could be fake, but let's see if he's come up before." They ran the name through federal databases. Nothing. Then through alias logs compiled by missing persons units. And there it was. A George Ellis had been listed as the pickup contact for a foster child in Southern Washington back in 1995. The address provided had been a trailer off a backlogging road near Timber. The caseworker who'd filed the paperwork died 2 years later in a car crash. The child was never confirmed to be picked up. No follow-up report was ever made. Ellis had vanished. And now he was back with a girl he called Rose. They found the trailer by accident. Wildlife team flying over the eastern Cascades spotted it deep in the trees, miles off any official path. A single dirt track led in, barely visible even from above. When authorities arrived, they found the place long abandoned, decaying walls, broken windows, rusted-out barrels stacked beside a makeshift smokehouse. But in the back room, carved into the wooden floor with a pocket knife, were 2 words. Rose was here. Rachel stood frozen in the doorway. The carving was fresh, no more than a few weeks old. The R was jagged deep. The E trailed off. "She tried to leave a sign," she whispered. "She's still trying." They collected the knife left nearby, cheap, dull, no prints. But inside a torn sleeping bag stuffed into the corner of the same room, agents found a ripped piece of flannel. The same pattern Bella had worn in a family photo, taken a week before they vanished. Denning made the call. He's still mobile, likely using side roads, logging access, old ranger stations. "We need to map out every possible shelter within 100 miles and put eyes on each one." The task force grew overnight. County police, FBI, Forest Service, retired rangers, people who knew the land like the back of their hand. They called it Operation Rose. Rachel couldn't sleep. She paced her kitchen, drove aimlessly through the outskirts of town, looking out at every group of travelers, every father with a daughter, every red pickup. Then, on a foggy Monday morning, the radio crackled with a lead. A hunter checking elk cameras near Little Crack Rock Meadow had found something strange, an old wooden structure with smoke rising from a chimney.
How did I know?
It wasn't on any current map. It's about 30 minutes past the county boundary, he told dispatch. I didn't go close. I don't go near places like that. Like what? Like places that don't want to be found? The photos he'd snapped showed the edge of a wooden cabin, tin roofing, sagging porch. The angle was wrong to see inside, but the smoke told them everything. Someone was there. Reeves, Denning, and a tactical team reached the perimeter before sunset. They parked a quarter-mile away and approached on foot, silent, tense, every bootstep. Calculated. The forest was damp and dark under the Tressino birdsong, just the wind. The cabin came into view slowly, a crooked shadow in the clearing. The chimney still puffed faint smoke. A thin trail of laundry hung from tree to tree. One piece flapped in the breeze, a girl's shirt. Reeves lifted his hand, froze. From behind the cabin a figure emerged. Not the girl, a man tall, gaunt. Sunken cheeks, gray streaks in his beard. He carried a water bucket and moved with slow, deliberate steps. Denning whispered, "That's our guy." They moved in. "FBI, hands where I can see them?" The man dropped the bucket. He bolted. Officers surged from both sides, chasing him through the thickets. He didn't make it far. Barnes tackled him near the creek, his shoulder hitting the rocks hard. He shouted once, "She's not mine." Before the cuffs went on, back at the cabin, Denning and Reeves entered carefully, weapons drawn. It was empty. Just a makeshift bed, rusted stove, food cans, and a locked hatch under the malge floor. Denning knelt beside it. The padlock was new. "Get me bolt cutters," she said. 2 minutes later, they had it open. Reeves pulled the hatch up slowly. A wooden ladder descended into darkness. From below came a sound, a whisper, a girl's voice. "Hello." The sound from beneath the hatch was soft, tired, cautious, but unmistakably human. "Hello?" Reeves leaned closer, flashlight gripped in one hand, voice steady. "This is law enforcement," he called gently. We're here to help. You're safe now." No reply came for several seconds. Then slowly a second whisper drifted up. "I don't know you." Denning stepped beside him. "We're with the FBI. Can you tell us your name?" Pause. Then Bella. Rachel, standing just beyond the doorway of the cabin, fell to her knees. The ladder creaked as Denning climbed down first, weapon holstered, but hand close. The space below was tighted dirt-floored cellar, maybe 8 feet wide. It smelled of damp wood, mold, and rust. A single flashlight lay dead in one corner. Against the back wall, hunched in a pile of old blankets, was a girl. She blinked against the light, her face pale, skin smudged with dust. Denning crouched. "Bella, my name's Kara. I'm here to take you home." Bella stared at her, eyes sharp but guarded. She was thinner than in the surveillance footage, gaunt cheeks, collarbones visible beneath a too large sweatshirt. Dark hair was long and tangled, but the eyes were the same brown, intense and full of a quiet, alert fire. "I thought he'd come back," she whispered. Denning lowered her voice. "George Ellis?" Bella didn't speak, just flinched slightly at the name. Denning nodded. "He's gone, in custody. He's not coming back. You're safe now." Bella blinked once, and then, like something inside her gave way, she whispered again, "Where's Noah?" It took 3 hours to get her out of the woods. She didn't want a stretcher. She walked with Denning's coat wrapped around her shoulders, silent except for a few whispered questions, none of which were answered yet. "Where's my mom? Do you have food? Do I still have a bed?" At the trailhead, Rachel stood frozen. As Bella came into view, frail, dirt-smudged, but real, alive. The girl hesitated only a second before stepping forward into her aunt's arms. No words, just a long, trembling exhale and a soft, broken sob that seemed to release 5 years of weight. At the hospital, Bella was checked for injuries, dehydration, and malnutrition. The doctor, a woman in her 60s, held Rachel's arm and whispered, She's lucky to be alive. Later that night, Bella was settled in a quiet recovery room, fur in her arm, applesauce on the tray, untouched. Denning asked if she was ready to talk. She nodded. But she didn't start with George Ellis. She started with the last day she remembered being safe. It was after lunch. Bella said softly. We were by the river. Mom and Dad were packing up the food. Noah was playing with rocks. Luke had gone to the trees to pee. Her fingers trembled as she picked at the edge of her blanket. That's when the man came. Reeves sat quietly, taking notes. Yes. He had a big knife and a rope. He grabbed Mom first.
As she screamed.
Dad tried to stop him, but the man had something like a spray. He made Dad fall. Rachel covered her mouth. He told us to get in the car, Bella continued. Not our car, his truck. He said if we didn't, he'd hurt Noah. She looked away, so we went. According to Bella, George Ellis never gave them his real name. He called himself Red at first, said he was rescuing them, that they needed to be away from the machines and the bad world. He took their shoes, hid their socks, said it was to keep them grounded. He moved us around, she said. First to a cabin, then a cave, then the trailer. Her voice dropped. Then just me. Just you? Denning asked gently. Bella nodded. And I woke up, and everyone was gone. No one said goodbye. I asked him where they went. He said they were taken back. To where? She shrugged. The place he said we came from. He said I was special, though, that I was quiet, that I knew how to listen. Denning asked carefully, Did he ever hurt you? Bella didn't answer, but her hand, resting on her lap, curled into a tight fist. The confession from George Ellis wasn't clean. At first he denied knowing her, denied the name Bella, claimed she was a runaway he found in the forest, that he'd saved her, fed her, clothed her, educated her. She's lying, he said. She doesn't remember. She was alone when I found her. But then Denning showed him the photo, the one of the Middleton family. Tent behind them. Everyone smiling, and in the bottom right corner, Bella holding the same music box they'd found in the cabin. Ellis cracked. She was supposed to forget, he said quietly. They all were. He confessed in stages, starting with partial truths. He had found the family. He had watched them first. I was out there, he said.
What?
I lived off the land, saw them come in, laughing, singing so loud. Something about their happiness set him off. He hadn't planned it, he claimed, but something snapped. I just wanted to talk, he insisted, to make them listen, but the dad fought. Back. I didn't mean to. I didn't want it to go that far. Go where? Denning pressed. Ellis lowered his head. Luke died first. The rest came slowly, painfully. Ellis had separated them, told Paul he was taking the kids for a walk, but never brought them back. He tied Marissa up in the tent, claimed she was too loud, said I'd see her again, Bella whispered. But I never did. She remembered screams, then silence. She remembered Noah crying, then nothing. One by one, they vanished until it was just her. Denning asked if she ever saw him bury anything. Bella nodded slowly. He had a shovel. He went out at night. Where? Bella pointed to the trees, as if they still surrounded her. Behind the cabin, past the creek, Daver dogs confirmed. The rest? 2 days later, search teams found shallow graves. Marissa, Paul, Luke, each identified by dental records and fragments of clothing. Noah was never found, but the music box Bella had insisted it had come from him suggested he had been there longer than anyone thought. Rachel sat at the edge of the forest that day, holding Bella's hand, watching as orange flags marked the ground. He was just 5, she whispered. Bella didn't speak, but her fingers curled into Rachel's coat and held on, like the world might fall away again if she let go. The press didn't know the full story yet, not all of it. Official statements were carefully worded. Remains located in proximity to original tent site. Investigation ongoing. Victims identified through dental records. But in the small community where the Middleton family once lived, everyone knew. Paul, Marissa, Luke, Bella, the only survivor, had been found alive but changed. The girl who used to belt songs in the back seat on road trips, who'd insisted on always sitting by her dad during camping meals, now barely spoke above a whisper. She flinched when a door closed too loudly. She asked to keep her shoes on when she slept, and she never, ever sat with her back to the door. Rachel stayed at the hospital every night, dozing upright in a hard plastic chair beside Bella's bed. Doctors said she was recovering quickly for someone who'd lived in captivity for so long. But emotional healing, they warned, was slower, more fragile. "She doesn't cry," one nurse whispered, "not even in her sleep. She just watches." And that's what she did, watched every person who walked into the room. Like she was trying to figure out whether they were real or part of some trick. But on the fourth night, she asked for paper. Rachel brought her a notebook and crayons, and Bella drew. She drew the forest, all trees, moss, fog. She drew the cabin, and she drew him, George Ellis. But then she turned the page and drew something else. Another man, one with a shaved head and a scar across his jaw. Rachel frowned. "Who's that?" Bella's hands stopped moving. "He was the other one." Rachel froze. "What do you mean, other one?" Bella's voice dropped. "He used to come to the cabin sometimes. Not often.
Out.
He brought food in bags. He talked to Red, but he never looked at me except once." Denning and Reeves were called immediately. They met Rachel and Bella in a secure conference room at the hospital the next morning. Denning brought photocopies of prior suspect sketches, old case files. Bella scanned them silently, then pointed to one. "That's him." The man she pointed to wasn't new. His name was Craig Dillard, age 45, formerly employed by the state as a wilderness contractor. He'd worked fire lines and forest clearing zones all across Oregon in the mid-90s. His name had once come up in an unrelated child neglect report, but charges were dropped due to lack of evidence. He'd moved out of state in 2001, or so they thought. Denning ran the name again. He'd resurfaced in Idaho in 2003, arrested for illegal hunting, released without bail. "He fits the profile," Denning said grimly. "Middle-aged, loner. History with isolated jobs and a pattern of slipping through cracks." They showed George Ellis the sketch. He stiffened. "I don't know him," he lied. Denning didn't push, just set the drawing on the table between them and said nothing. Eventually, Ellis broke. "He brought me things," he muttered. "I didn't ask questions. He just showed up." "What did he bring?" Denning asked. "Canned food, tools. Once a shotgun. Said I'd need it if anyone came sniffing." "Why help you?" Ellis didn't meet her eyes. "He hated people like me. Said the system was rotting from the inside. Said families were lies, that love made people weak." Denning narrowed her eyes. "So why did he keep coming back?" Ellis's silence said everything. "'Cause he wanted something in return," she said. Ellis didn't deny it. They searched state employment records. Craig Dillard had last collected a paycheck in 2002 under a subcontracting company based out of Grants Pass. The address on file led to a trailer long, since repossessed, but a fuel card issued to him had been used just 4 months earlier at a gas station near Ochoco Pass. Then, another hit, in 2004. A woman named Teresa Caldwell had reported a man harassing her at her cabin near Polina Lake. She described him as balding, with a deep scar on his chin, drove an old blue Jeep, smelled like smoke.
Yes.
He'd approached her, asking if she lived alone. She said yes, thinking nothing of it. A week later, her dog vanished. She moved out the next month. No arrest was ever made. When Reeves showed her Bella's drawing, she turned white. "That's him," she said. "That's the man." Meanwhile, Bella made another request. She wanted to see the music box again. It had been placed into evidence, then logged and stored by the sheriff's department. Rachel signed it out with Reeves beside her, and together they brought it to Bella's room. She took it without speaking, set it in her lap, and slowly turned the key. The song was warped, metallic and off-pitch, but familiar, the melody of her baby brother's lullaby. "I held it," she said softly, when they took him away. Rachel sat perfectly still. "They said he was too small," Bella whispered, "that he cried too much, that he slowed us down." She paused, then turned the key again. He never came back. Rachel tried to speak, but her voice caught. Then Bella looked up. "But I don't think he died." Reeves leaned in. "What do you mean?" Bella pointed to the wall as if it were a forest. "They gave him to someone else." The statement changed everything. The bodies had been found. Marissa, Paul, Luke, but not Noah. For 5 years. They assumed he died early, sick, hungry, unable to survive in the wilderness. But now, new possibility emerged. That George Ellis or Craig Dillard or someone else entirely had taken the toddler and passed him along, sold him, left him, or worse. Denning reviewed all prior reports of found children between 1997 and 2001. Dozens had been identified, but 2 remained open, one in Montana and one in Northern California. Both boys were found under strange circumstances. No parents, no records, no DNA matches. Both were placed at approximately age 5 when found. The Montana boy had since been adopted and renamed. The California case had gone cold. The child was taken into the system, then disappeared again through a failed placement. Denning ordered DNA swabs for both. While the tests were underway, Richo took Bella home. Home? It didn't feel like it used to. The house was quiet, smaller somehow. Bella walked through the hallway like someone seeing a dream they barely remembered, touching the walls, studying photos. She paused at a framed drawing Luke had once made, a crayon version of the family, camping by a lake. "That was from our last trip," she said softly. Rachel nodded. Bella turned toward her. "Why didn't you stop him?" Rachel's breath caught. "Bella, we didn't know. We didn't know where you were. We searched for years." "I yelled," Bella whispered. "When they took me, I yelled loud." Tears rose in Rachel's eyes. "I know," she said. "I know, baby girl, and I'm so sorry." Bella stared at the photo again, then said something that chilled Rachel to the bone. He had more than one tent. The revelation sent Reeves back into the woods. The tent found by Mark Delaney, the one thought to be the campsite, might have been planted a decoy, a cover. "I don't think that was where it started," Bella had said. "It was different, the trees, the rocks. He moved us." She drew map-screwed shapes, slopes, streams, a tree stump that looked like a chair. They used topographical modeling software to match the drawings to known areas within 15 miles of the original site. 2 matches came up. One had been logged in 1998, the other was never searched. It was time to go back in to the real beginning. The coordinates matched an overgrown ravine east of where the original Middleton tent had been discovered, remote. No trails, no ranger access, just sloping rock faces, dense canopy, and silence. Agent Denning, Reeves, and 2 search teams hiked out at first light. Bella had circled the ridgeline on a printed map the night before, her fingers steady as she traced a winding route along a dry stream bed. "That's where we were first," she'd said. They believed her. 3 hours in, the terrain shifted. Trees grew closer together, moss thicker underfoot. Then, as they rounded a bend near a granite bluff, Reeves stopped. Over there, half covered in leaf litter, wedged between 2 rocks, was a metal spoon. Faded red plastic at the end, a child's. He bent down and picked it up. It was still sticky. Barnes scanned the area and motioned left. 20 yards away, concealed under a lattice of fallen branches, was a tarp green, sun-bleached, brittle. Denning pulled it back slowly. Underneath was a second tent, half collapsed. Mottled with mold, but intact enough to prove one thing. Bella was right. They had been moved. Inside the tent, time had stopped. A rusted lantern. A small foam mattress sunken in the middle, and in the far corner. A child's jacket blue with yellow stars, crumpled. Mice had torn into the seams. Reeves gently unfolded it. Sewn into the collar was a name tag. Noah M. Rachel broke down when she saw it. They'd kept everything: school clothes, baby blankets, just in case. She knew the jacket immediately. Marissa had bought it on clearance. Noah had hated the way it zipped. It always got stuck. Denning knelt to examine the seams. Inside the pocket, she found something else. a small slip of paper, wet, faded, but one word was still visible: run. The scene was photographed, documented, then carefully packed. Everything went to the state lab. Meanwhile, a forensic pathologist arrived on site to examine a patch of disturbed earth just outside the tent-loose soil, different color, about 2 feet wide. The dogs were brought in again. It wasn't a body this time. It was a box, a plastic crate with a sealed lid. Inside, toys, a cloth book, a sippy cup, one small shoe. Everything was clean, preserved, packed like someone had been preparing to take a child somewhere else. Either he was planning to move him, Denning said, or he already did. Back in town, the DNA results from the 2 unidentified boys came in. The California boy, negative. No match to the Middletons. But the Montana case Rachel was there when the call came. Mrs. McConnell, the voice said, we have a partial match. Strong likelihood this is your nephew, Noah. Rachel dropped the phone. The child, now living under the name Eli, had been adopted in 2002. His adoptive parents were unaware of his past. He had been found wandering near a rest stop, silent, afraid, with no ID. He didn't speak for months. He was 8 years old now. When approached by the child welfare team, he panicked, refused to speak at first. But when they showed him a photo of the jacket, he touched the screen. Mine, he whispered. Then, softly, after nearly a decade in silence, where is Bella? Reunion happened under supervision in a secure room with therapists nearby. Bella sat in a chair, legs tucked up, hands in her lap. When Eli entered, when Noah entered, he stopped in the doorway. They stared at each other. Neither moved for a full 30 seconds. Then, slowly, Bella stood. Noah's chin trembled. She opened her arms. He ran into them. And for the first time since 1997, the last 2 living members of the Middleton family held each other again. No cameras, no reporters, just tears and a quiet, stunned kind of joy. Craig Dillard, however, was still missing. Denning had his image sent to every border crossing, every bus terminal, every DMV office west of the Rockies. She checked the names of his known associates, bank records, burner phones. Then a tip came in from a logging inspector in Washington State. He'd seen a man matching the sketch near a sawmill outside Hoquiam, sleeping in a van, hanging around near the loading dock. Said he seemed off, watched people. A license plate was captured by a private camera. Oregon tags expired. They traced it to an abandoned vehicle 3 miles away, buried under a tarp near the river. In the glove box, a journal. Most of the pages were filled with paranoid scribbles, anti-government rants, diagrams of forest routes, lists of food supplies, but 2 pages stood out. They were titled The Kids. Underneath a list of names, most unreadable except one. Bella rose. Beside it, obedient learns fast, but eyes always watching. Noah, too young, handed off, not suitable for purpose. Reeves put the journal down slowly. What purpose? He whispered. They searched the van thoroughly. In a hidden compartment under the driver's seat, they found a second ID, different name. Same photo. Clive Richardson. Name tied to a background check flagged in a case from 1999. The disappearance of a woman and her 4-year-old son near the California border. Never solved, case cold. Denning called the detective who had worked that case. His notes described a man who called himself Red. Same behavior, same type of remote forest access. Same sudden disappearance, same age, same scar. Denning looked up from the file, her face tight with fury. He's done this before. Bella didn't sleep that night. Rachel woke up to find her standing by the window, arms crossed. He's still out there, Bella said quietly. Rachel nodded. Won't get away. Not this time. Bella didn't speak for a long while. Then finally, he wasn't the worst part. Rachel frowned. What do you mean? Bella turned. The worst part, she said, was no one knew we were alive. The manhunt for Craig Dillard went federal within 24 hours. The journal found in his van confirmed what Denning had suspected. From the beginning, he wasn't just an accomplice. He was a predator, a planner, and, most terrifying of all, possibly a repeat offender whose trail had been overlooked for years. She stood in front of a whiteboard in the task force war room, red strings now stretching across multiple states: Oregon, Washington, Northern California, Montana. At least 4 unsolved disappearances matched his known movements. Some victims had never been identified. Some were thought to be runaways. Others were just forgotten. But now, the dots were forming lines. And at the center of them all, Craig Dillard. Back in Oregon, Bella and Noah had been moved to a safe location under federal protection. The siblings were together again, but the road to healing was long. Therapists worked slowly, gently helping them process trauma that still surfaced in jagged, broken ways. Noah had nightmares almost every night, waking up crying, hands covering his ears. Bella stayed strong for him. She slept on the floor beside his bed, whispering to him when he trembled in the dark. The bond between them was unshakable. But even in safety, Bella rarely smiled. "I thought if I made it out," she told Rachel one afternoon, "it would feel like the end." Rachel gently stroked her hair. "Sweetheart, this isn't the end. This is the beginning." Bella shook her head. "It doesn't feel like it." Then came the letter, postmarked from a small town in Idaho. It was addressed to the Aunt of Rose. No return address, no signature, but inside was a single sheet of paper, yellowed and folded carefully. The message was short. They belonged to the forest, the quiet ones, the ones who listened. "You took what was mine. I see you." It wasn't Ellis's handwriting. It wasn't Bella's. It was Craig Dillard's. The message confirmed what they feared. He was watching, still nearby, still dangerous. Aerial reconnaissance was dispatched across the suspected Idaho corridor. Checkpoints were added. Denning issued a bolo with updated sketches and added aliases. But Dillard had one advantage they couldn't fight. He knew how to disappear. He knew how to blend into tree lines and supply caches and side roads no map could track. He didn't need cities. He didn't need help. He needed only isolation and quiet, but then a break. A forest ranger near the Clearwater National Forest in Idaho reported finding a campsite deep in an unpatrolled area. Not a typical camper, no permits. No markings, just a tarp, a fire ring, and dozens of cigarette butts scattered in a precise circle like a ritual. In the ashes, bones too small to be animal. Forensic teams airlifted in. The bones were old, charred, probably decades old. But what caught their attention was something else. A locket inside a photo Bella, cut from the Middleton family photo discovered years ago inside the tent. He'd been carrying it all this time. Denning stood by the evidence table, staring at the locket. "He kept her picture," she whispered like a trophy. Reeves nodded grimly, or an obsession. The perimeter around Clearwater was widened. Drones were deployed, dogs brought in. They searched caves, root cellars, undergrowth, nothing. But then on day 4, one of the drones picked up something unusual. Thermal imaging of a structure partially covered in earth near a ravine wall. It wasn't visible by air or ground unless someone stood directly over it. Denning didn't wait. They hiked out that night. What they found looked like a bunker, corrugated steel, logs, and dirt built into the land. The door was sealed from the inside with an old truck axle. Took an hour to breach it. Side, total darkness. The smell hit first. Mildew, old food, kerosene. They cleared the space inch by inch. No sign of Dillard, but a room in the back had child-sized furniture, cot, books, toys, some hand-carved. Along the wall, a row of photos pinned with rusted nails. Most were cut from magazines, but one was Bella, older, drawn with pencil, labeled in black letters, "My listener." Denning's skin went cold. This wasn't random, she whispered. Planned to keep her forever. Rachel was told everything. And though Bella wasn't in the room when she heard it, she seemed to know. That night, she walked outside to the porch of the safe house, curled under a blanket, and watched the stars. When Rachel joined her, Bella asked softly, "Do you think he'll come back?" Rachel hesitated. "Think he wants to, but I also think we'll catch him." Bella nodded slowly. "I hope we do." Then, after a long pause, "But not just for me. Rachel looked over. For who else, sweetheart? Bella's answer was almost a whisper. For the other girl. Rachel froze. What girl? Bella didn't look away from the sky. She was there sometimes. I don't know her name. She never talked, but she had red hair and freckles. She wore a pink coat. He called her Quiet Bird. Where did she go? Bella's eyes narrowed slightly. One day she was just gone. Denning took the description and ran it through National Missing Persons. Red-haired girl, pink coat, approximate age 8 to 10. Last seen before 2001. 6 possible matches came up. One stood out, Hannah Briggs, age 9. Vanished from a rest stop near Crater Lake in 1998. She'd been traveling with her uncle. The uncle was later ruled out after dashcam footage showed he'd left her with park staff before driving away. She was never seen again. When Bella was shown an age-regressed photo of Hannah, she nodded instantly. That's her. Denning's blood ran cold. Craig Dillard wasn't a one-time accomplice. It was a serial abductor and maybe worse. The FBI held a press briefing that Friday. Denning spoke carefully but firmly. We believe the individual, known as Craig Dillard, may be connected to multiple child disappearances spanning over a decade. These cases, previously unlinked, share geographical patterns, behavioral similarities, and a suspect description now confirmed by a surviving victim. Reporters leaned forward. What's the FBI's message to Dillard if he's watching? Denning didn't hesitate. We see you. We're coming. The same night, Bella finally asked a question Rachel had dreaded. Can I visit the graves? Rachel's voice trembled. You sure? Bella nodded. They waited for me. I want to be there now. So they went. Quietly, no media. Just a drive to the memorial site in the foothills where Paul, Marissa, and Luke had been buried side by side. Noah's grave was marked symbolically, an empty plot, a white stone. Bella knelt before it, pulling a folded piece of paper from her coat. It was a drawing she'd made in the hospital, a family of 6, holding hands under trees, and in the corner, a blue tent. She tucked it under the flowers and whispered, We're not lost anymore. It was a postal worker who spotted him. Early. October, Grangeville, Idaho. A narrow road off Highway 13, flanked by endless pine. The man was walking slowly, coat too large for his frame, boots worn to the sole. He paused near a dumpster, glanced around, then continued toward the tree line. Something about the way he walked, the scar, the sideways glance. The worker waited until he was out of sight, pulled off to the shoulder, and made the call. Possible sighting of Craig Dillard. 2 hours later, the forest was swarming. Denning stood at the edge of the trees, radio clipped to her vest. Helicopters circled overhead. Dogs barked from the ravine. Officers moved in grids, covering every foot with military precision. Finally, under a thicket of cedar and brush, they found him curled under a hollow log. He didn't resist, didn't run, didn't speak. They zip-tied his hands, carried him to a van, and drove him out of the forest where he'd spent half a lifetime hiding from a world that finally caught up with him. At the interrogation, Denning sat across from him in a room that smelled like bleach and exhaustion. Dillard stared at the table, like it might crack open and swallow him whole. His wrists were cuffed, his mouth dry, but his eyes dark and sunken remained alert. You're facing federal kidnapping charges, Denning began. Of homicide, conspiracy, transporting a minor across state lines, and that's just the beginning. Dillard said nothing. You've been running for 8 years. Silence. You took Bella Middleton, Noah Middleton. You were seen identified. We have handwriting samples, DNA from your campsite, thermal footage of your bunker, and her. She remembers you. Still he said nothing until she laid down the locket. The photo of Bella inside it. He blinked. His throat worked once. I kept her safe, he said quietly. Denning's jaw tightened. Safe. She was different, he said. She listened. Shh. You killed her parents. Brother Dillard didn't flinch. They were loud. Denning leaned forward. What about the other children? Hannah Briggs, the others? His lip curled. She couldn't be saved. She wasn't ready. And Noah Dillard looked up. Ellis took him. Denning froze. What? Didn't want him, he cried too much. Red said he could place him somewhere quiet, far away. Denning's mind spun. You're saying Ellis sold the boy? No, Dillard whispered. He traded him. For what? He stared at the wall, supplies, fuel, papers. The statement was verified against Ellis's earlier confession. At the time, Ellis had denied it, but now, facing new charges, he broke. Described meeting a man near the Idaho border in the winter of '98, a man with money and a van. Said he was building a family, paid in gas, food, and 2 forged IDs. I just wanted the baby gone, Ellis had said. Screamed all night. He was going to give us away. The man's name he didn't know. Said they called him the Reverend. For the first time in nearly a decade, the horror had a new name, and it was bigger than anyone thought. Dillard wasn't working alone.
Ellis wasn't working alone?
There was a network fragmented underground. Mobile Denning pulled in the Bureau's child trafficking unit, cross-referenced known aliases, coded foster placements, off-grid religious shelters. It was slow, painful work, but eventually, a lead broke open in Nevada rural property outside Elko. Once listed as a wilderness rehabilitation center for troubled youth, closed in 2003, but new satellite images showed tire tracks leading in and out. A task force was dispatched. What they found was nothing short of a survivalist compound abandoned, yes, but still filled with signs of recent activity. Bunk rooms, old school books, canned goods, and names etched into the wall near. The mess hall, Bella, Noah, Hannah, and 8 more. The media didn't know the scope yet, but internally, the FBI was preparing for the worst. Denning returned to Oregon and met Bella and Noah in private. She explained carefully, honestly, that the man who had taken them hadn't been acting alone, that there were more victims, possibly more survivors, that everything Bella had remembered, every image, every person, was now part of a national case. Bella said nothing for a long time. Then she asked, "Can I help?" Denning tilted her head.
Help how?
I remember things, Bella, said. The way they smelled, the cars they drove, the songs they sang. I remember their faces, and I'm not afraid anymore. Dillard pleaded guilty to multiple charges. Life in prison without parole. Ellis took a deal. Life in exchange for information, maps, names, drop sites. Neither man would ever walk free again. But in the wake of their arrests, a new wave of cases emerged. Families came forward. Cold files reopened. Children once dismissed as runaways were now part of something far darker. Bella's courage had sparked an avalanche, and she knew it. 1 month later, she stood beside Noah at a press conference. Cameras clicked, reporters hushed. Rachel stood just off stage, hands clasped, heart in her throat. Bella cleared her voice. My name is Bella Middleton. I was taken when I was 8 years old. My family was hurt, but I'm here. My brother is here, and there are others out there just like us, waiting to be found. She paused, eyes burning. We didn't vanish. We were hidden, and now we remember. The room fell into silence, and then came the applause, not polite, but thunderous. That night, Rachel found a letter in her mailbox, no stamp, no envelope, just a folded note slipped through the slot. She unfolded it carefully. It read, "They remember, but I never forget." There was no address, no fingerprints, only one thing, the scent of pine. Fall came quietly that year. The leaves in Prineville turned gold and brittle, and the wind carried a hush that seemed to honor what had been lost. At the small memorial near the foothills, where the Middleton family's headstones rested side by side, a new plaque had been added. Paul, Marissa, Luke, you were taken too soon, but they came home. Bella stood in front of it with Noah, now both under federal guardianship. Their lives beginning again in a new school, with new names, but not without memory. Rachel watched from a few feet back, her hands tucked into the sleeves of her coat. She didn't call out. She didn't interrupt. She simply let them have their silence, because some things are too sacred for words. Noah placed a small object at the base of Luke's marquera, smooth stone he'd painted himself. On it, He'd written in blocky, uneven handwriting, "Big brothers don't disappear, they wait." Bella knelt next, pulling a folded paper from her pocket. It was her last drawing, one she hadn't shown anyone. This one showed two versions of the family. One under stars, frightened in the woods. The other under the sun, standing tall, together, safe. She placed it gently between the flowers and whispered something that only the wind heard. Then she stood, turned, and walked away without looking back. A month later, Rachel moved out of her old home to many shadows in the hallway. Too many nights spent wondering what she'd missed, what signs she hadn't seen. She started a foundation in Bella and Noah's name, the Listeners Project, to fund investigations into long-cold child disappearance cases. Survivors could submit anonymous tips, share stories, and find counseling. It quickly grew. People started talking, connecting the dots. Because Bella had taught them something vital, sometimes survival isn't about being rescued, it's about being remembered. And in a quiet house in northern Washington, a man stepped into his shed. He locked the door behind him, pulled out a wooden box. Inside, newspaper clippings, names, old photos. He picked up a sketch of Bella, older, smiling, holding Noah's hand. He stared at it for a long time, then crossed it out. A new name was written beneath it, a town, a date. He smiled, faintly clicked off the light, and vanished into the night.